The XM-1 is an American top-tier premium tank that was developed as a prototype for the US Army's M1 Abrams tank project. Boasting godlike mobility, decent armour, and a fast-firing, hard-hitting gun, the XM-1 has certainly made a name for itself among the Warthunder player base. But with the recent BR increase up to battle rating 9.3, is the XM-1 still worth its incredibly high price tag? Alright lads, today I'm going to be talking about the performance, weapons and playstyle of this 1500 horsepower American monster. Starting as always with the basics, the XM-1 is a rank 6 battle rating 9.3 main battle tank located in the American tech tree. This is of course a premium vehicle and must be purchased in a pack from the Guardian store. For a price of €60, you receive the XM-1, 2000 Golden Eagles and 15 days of premium time. Being a premium, the tank only has a 10,000 Silverline crew train price. It also has a relatively low expert qualification cost of 790,000 Silver Lions and a fairly average ace qualification cost of 2,000 Golden Eagles. This tank has the same base RP modifier of most of the other top tier premiums. With a base modifier of 2.14, you can expect an RP modifier of 428% with a free-to-play account and 642% with a premium account. The XM-1 also receives the same base Silverline modifier that all of the other top tier premiums receive. With a base modifier of 1.4, you can expect a 280% Silverline modifier with a free-to-play account and 420% with a premium account. If you'd like to know more about this tank and whether it's worth its whopping €60 price tag, then stick around for the rest of the video. The XM-1 was powered by a new variable compression diesel engine, producing 1,521 horsepower, the highest power output of any premium vehicle in War Thunder. This engine power, combined with the vehicle's weight of 52.6 tons, gives the XM-1 a power-to-weight ratio of 28.9 horsepower per ton. Not only does the XM-1 have the highest horsepower per ton ratio of any premium tank, but it is also one of the highest in the game. This engine allows the tank to get up to a top speed of 83 km per hour, and with your great horsepower to ton ratio, the acceleration is incredible. Imagine a Hellcat on meth armed with a 105mm cannon. That is basically the XM-1. Your reverse speed is also pretty good. At 42 km per hour, you can certainly retreat out of trouble if need be. This is a particularly good feature of this tank, as it allows you to peek corners, take a shot, and get back into cover within seconds. This tank also has the ability to neutral steer, and has a hull traverse rate of around 40 degrees per second, which is incredibly impressive. Overall, the XM-1 has superb mobility and is by far the most mobile premium tank in the game. The high power to weight ratio gives you amazing acceleration, top speed and hull traverse, which really does make this tank suitable to fight in numerous settings, whether it be tight urban areas or long flanking routes. The XM-1 has the power and acceleration to excel in all theatres of war. Developed in the late 1970s, the XM-1 was designed at a time when composite armour was still emerging as the best way to protect a tank. Some composite armour layouts were incorporated into the XM-1's design, but many parts of the tank still relied on road homogeneous steel armour. Like the XM-1's bigger brother, the M1 Abrams, the XM-1 has a 4-man crew which is pretty spread out amongst the fighting compartment. This makes the XM-1 quite hard to kill in a single shot. Starting as always with the upper frontal plate, you can see that it does not receive any composite armour, instead relying on the older spaced armour design, primarily used to defeat high explosive anti-tank fin stabilised rounds. Due to the XM-1 being battle rating 9.3, the majority of guns firing at you will be using APF-SDS rounds, so these are the rounds I will use to test the armour of this vehicle. The upper frontal plate provides around 211mm of protection against APF-SDS rounds, which at battle rating 9.3 is pretty useless, seeing as the average gun is firing back at you with above 350mm of penetration. The sides of the hull are again pretty awful, with only 72mm of protection. You may be able to withstand small caliber cannons from medium ranges, but nothing more. The rear of the hull, as expected, is only a measly 33mm of protection. Going back to the turret face, we can see both the turret cheeks have been blessed with composite armour. The composite covers the crew positions of all members located in the turret fighting compartment, but note the large gaps in the composite armour surrounding the gun breech. Against APF-SDS rounds, the composite armour only gives you roughly 257mm of protection, but against Heat-FS rounds, it offers much more protection. The XM-1's own Heat-FS round is unable to penetrate its own turret, as the turret cheeks provide roughly 581mm of protection against Heat-FS rounds. Similarly to the hull sides and rear, the sides and rear of the turret are also considerably weaker. Unlike the M1 Abrams, the XM-1 did not receive any composite armour along the side of its turret. Seeing as the XM-1's turret side is only made of steel, it provides a measly 47mm of protection against APF-SDS rounds, and the rear of the turret is worse still, with only 26mm. Overall, the XM-1 is pretty well protected in a hold down position against enemies firing heat FS, but at battle rating 9.3, hardly any vehicle will be using heat FS rounds. Therefore, the armour of the XM-1 is unreliable at best, and should not be used as your main source of survival. The XM-1 is not a brawling tank. Instead, use your great mobility to peek, fire and retreat back into cover, out of harm's way. The XM-1 is armed with the M86 105mm cannon. This is an American licence-built variant of the British L7 gun. It has 15 degrees of gun elevation and 10 degrees of gun depression. This is ideal as it allows you to work ridgelines without exposing a relatively weak hull armour. You can carry 55 rounds of ammunition in total, but I would not recommend taking any more than 24 rounds into a game. This is because your ready rack, which is safely located at the back of your turret, can hold 24 rounds in total. Carrying any more than 24 rounds means that ammunition will be stored in your hull, which is an easy ammo rack for an experienced opponent. As well as the turret's decent composite armour, the turret also has a very good traverse rate, one of the most important parts of a top tier tank in my opinion. The turret is able to traverse at 37 degrees per second, giving it the highest traverse rate of any premium tank in War Thunder. The turret also contains a 2-plane gun stabilizer, making the aiming of the tank gun incredibly smooth, even when taking full advantage of the XM-1's excellent mobility. The cannon itself, as I already mentioned, is essentially a copy of all of the other 105mm guns found on vehicles at a similar battle rating, and due to it being a copy, it has the same great reload time, with a stock crew able to reload every 8.7 seconds, and a fully trained ace crew every 6.7 seconds. The stock round available to the XM-1 is the M728 armour-piercing discarding sabot round. It has 260mm of penetration at 10 meters and a muzzle velocity of 1,426 meters per second. I don't really see any reason to use this round other than the fact that it is free. Another round that has very little use is the M416 smoke shell. It can create a pretty decent smoke screen with a radius of 20 meters and a hold time of 25 seconds, but it is pretty much useless in 99% of firefights. For soft targets, you get access to the M393A2 high explosive squash head round. This has a relatively low muzzle velocity of 732 meters per second and can only penetrate 127mm of armour. While not being useful against main battle tanks, the HESH round contains 4.3 kilograms of TNT equivalent, making it excellent for taking out soft targets. Another shell that is a good all-rounder is the M456 high explosive anti-tank fin stabilised round. It has a muzzle velocity of 1,173 meters per second and 400mm of penetration at all ranges. While this round is effective at battle rating 9.3 and below, in an up tier, where most tanks are packed full of composite armour, it is significantly less effective. In general, and in top tier especially, your main round will be the M735 armour-piercing fin stabilised disregarding sabot round. It has a muzzle velocity of 1,501 meters per second and can penetrate 353mm of armour. This is an early APF-SDS round and isn't as effective as the second and third generation APFS rounds found in the German tech tree, for example. While this round is more than capable of killing anything it will see at its own battle rating of 9.3, when fully up tiered, this APF-SDS round is incredibly weak and you will have to aim for weak spots pretty much every shot. While this is a definite negative, as you get up tiered a lot, you can use your mobility to attempt to flank the opponent and get shot into their weaker sides. To make your long range shots easier, you have a laser rangefinder which gives you precise distance measurements within seconds. You also have a very good optical zoom, with both 8x and 12x magnification available. You also have access to thermal optics, which significantly increase the lethality of this tank, as it is much easier to acquire targets in poor visibility. As well as your main cannon, you get 2 rifle caliber machine guns, as well as 1 roof mounted 50 caliber machine gun. Overall, the cannon and fire control systems are very good on the XM-1. It is just let down by its ammunition. The early generation APF-SDS round means that up tiers are a real struggle if you don't know where weak spots are, but at battle rating 9.3 and below, the cannon is perfectly capable of holding its own with other contemporary guns. When you spawn into a game, I would recommend taking no more than 24 rounds. I personally mainly load 20 rounds of APF-SDS rounds and 4 rounds of HESH. I mentioned in the armour section that the XM-1 is not a brawler. It shouldn't be sat somewhere trading shots with other players. Instead, you want to play the XM-1 like the M18 Hellcat, using your great mobility to get you into an ambush position, and then waiting for opponents to approach you. I wouldn't recommend rushing directly into enemies, as your armour cannot be relied on to effectively bounce incoming rounds. When in an up tier, you are better off doing the aforementioned flanking, or just supporting your own bigger and meaner main battle tanks. When an enemy fires at your ally, pop out and try and shoot a weak spot, such as their barrel or gun breach. This will allow your friendly top tier MBT an easy kill, and you an assist. Your weak APF-SDS round really does limit your ability to carry a top tier game, so the supporting role, or flanking to get side shots, are your best shot at a successful top tier game. In terms of lineups, the XM-1 is a bit let down again. There are no other competitive vehicles in the American tech tree which sit at battle rating 9.3. This is obviously a bad thing, as if you get up tier to 10.3, the majority of your lineup will be 9.0 or lower, making you relatively ineffective to the team. You can bring along both the XM-1 and the MBT-70 as your main battle tanks, the Merkava Mark II-B if you have it unlocked, the M3 Bradley is a light tank, and the M247 as your self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. In terms of close air support, the FJ-4B is still your best bet. To conclude, I believe that the XM-1 moving up to battle rating 9.3 has significantly reduced its effectiveness. In reality, the XM-1 should go back down to 9.0. At 9.3, 80% of the games I have played have been a full up tier to 10.3. Well, you really do struggle to make an impact in a game, both due to your shortcomings such as the gun and your lack of an effective lineup. In an up tier, there are several vehicles which have a high power to weight ratio, which pretty much makes your main advantage, your speed, useless. Tanks such as the T-80U, which are well armed, armoured and highly mobile, completely make the XM-1 redundant. While the XM-1 is very effective when played properly as a support vehicle, I do not think it is still worth its full €60 asking price. It just doesn't have the tools necessary to deal with top tier main battle tanks. I believe putting a talisman on the XM-803, MBT-70 or Merkava Mark II-B is a much better choice for your average player. If you are not yet at the top tier in the American tree, then I would highly recommend the T-29 heavy tank as your first American premium. The T-29 costs literally half as much as the XM-1 and is pretty dominant at its own battle rating. Personally, I do like the XM-1 and I have used it to grind out most of the late tier American tanks. I do appreciate the tank's ability to be a good backup vehicle in a 10.0 lineup, but the constant up tiers to 10.3, subpar APF SDS rounds, and pretty poor armour protection make this tank nowhere near as effective as it was upon its introduction. As always, I hope you found this video useful lads, and thank you very much for watching.